All right, Maggie, let's go.
Good morning, Meg O'Leary.
You want to come up and sit and talk to the hockey buck there? Sure. Yes.
Self-titled governance, the Big Sky Governance Study. You saw me here maybe in October, and then I zoomed in November. I'll give a 5-minute update of where we are today. The study kicked off in September with a public meeting and about 100 responses to what people think they want in their governance changes going forward for the community. We then spent hours and hours meeting with people, including Johnny and Terry, to talk about how does this place run? How does the district run? There were over 20 meetings with nonprofits and districts and community members, and the two technical teams, it's WGM Group, which, you know, Mace's in the room. Mace has been overseeing it with really good guidance for us. The fiscal team comes out of the Northwest. Those two teams, those two technical teams, have been working on the existing conditions to the community. And at the end of this month, January 28th, that existing conditions report will be presented to the community. That's the way the community operates and the checkbook of the community. And they uncovered a whole lot of stuff, including that some of you probably know this, that the Zoning and Architectural Committee actually has the ability to levy and collects a little bit of tax money. I don't know if that was new. That was new to our crew. And all of that is going to be presented in that report. It's pretty interesting. Also, that one of the guys on the technical team went through 2,500 pages of Montana code to see what kind of implementation barriers are if there is a change in governance. That's the big news, is please attend the January 28th meeting at the Wilson at 5:30. And in addition to that, since that September meeting, we held several different series of ways to engage with the community, including 3 sessions right here in this room. We called it the Tuesday series. We got all kinds of information about how people don't really understand what's going on with governance at any level. And we learned at that series that, boy, we better do another series that gives people, that arms people with the ability to go, whoa, if we create a new county, it's probably a no deal, unless we want to be in this for 10 years. So, because one of the things that everybody thinks we should be doing is creating our own county to stay in, to keep our tax dollars here. But creating a new county is going to be a hard lift. People don't understand that. People think we can just create a new county. That whole series was called the Scenario Development Toolkit. And on our website, you could download the toolkit. It's a big, fat Excel spreadsheet that gives you options. It's structural options. So you can go in and you can start creating your own version of how you want to see the community. It's on our website. I can get Amy the website. She can get it out to everybody. But if you do have time, it's not a bad way to spend 20 minutes looking at ways to understand how we can layer governance together in the future. And please do attend that meeting on January 28th.
Thanks for coming, Maggie. It's good to see you.
You bet.
Okay. Anyone else for public comment? Anything not on the agenda? Questions, comments? Anyone on the screen? Okay. Then we'll get we'll call the regular meeting to order. Start off with the conflict of interest declaration. None. 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 Okay. None. All right. We'll go into the consent agenda. Everybody have a chance to look or review the consent agenda? Okay, I'll entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, second. Okay. Terry?
No news is good news.
You sure?
Yes.
Your final answer?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, carried unanimously. Committee reports then. How do you want to do the canyon? Do you want to save that for later? We did have a workshop in between, a workshop that covered a couple of topics here.
Since Mace's got a standing order on the agenda, I would just say address it in the agenda and I can remove the.
No, that's fine. It's kind of unusual the way it worked out. There was actually a workshop, just as a reminder, with BizRad on, I think, the second, and it definitely dovetailed the two committees or two boards moving forward. So we'll cover that with Mace. Compliance committee?
Everything's going good as far as I know.
Okay, no news again is good news. Budget CIP committee, so there was a meeting scheduled now this month, or is that the standing meeting?
Standing meeting starting in February.
Second Tuesday, 10 o'clock.
Okay, so now we have, for anyone else that's interested, it's second Tuesday, 10 o'clock every month for the budget CIP. Just like the Canyon, Spanish Peaks, we had a subcommittee, a lot of activity, a lot of positive progress. And Flatiron as well. There's been some communication going back and forth and it's starting to fall into line. That's it. Okay, business action items. No, this could be a record for the shortest. We're going to old business capital improvements plan projects. Scott, you have the floor. Thanks for coming on.
You. As usual, we'll start with the treatment plant. We have certificate of occupancy, certificate of substantial completion, and acceptance of work all in the last couple of weeks here, as we planned, basically to try to get RCI out of there by end of December 2025, other than warranty work, which when my Adams update, there's a fair amount of that going on, so we're still actively involved. RCI is still actively involved. Specifics are getting motors fixed for blowers, helping Adam with freezing issues on those CRVs, the air relief valves on the EQ pumps. We help them figure out decanting on the digestion, all the, technical stuff, optimization of what he's gotten. I don't know if you want to add any thing on project delivery or wrapping up that project in terms of construction admin and switching any warranty.
Yeah, we're just working through, like you said, a few kind of outstanding items, fine tuning a few pieces of equipment. Things are going good. It's nice to have RC out of there and have our own space. Move forward with as a plan.
Including plant performance. Adam and Zach Freeling have really helped it hit its stride by getting some air out of there. And we've got more of a load now that the skiers have shown up, which helps the plant quite a bit.
And we're seeing great results right now. Had some data in my work packet that I sent to Johnny. I don't know if that made it into his report, but yeah, real good numbers coming on the plan.
What was the peak flows day for the holiday?
730 or the first. We saw 702,000 gallons.
Only 7, huh?
Yep.
Huh. You might have been pushing up a little higher. I mean, some record days going on.
To me, that still points back to better I&I control and maybe lower groundwater, because we just haven't had a lot of wet years here recently. So yeah, it's still not quite what we were seeing during design. So we've got a big engine down there and it's nice to give it more fuel. It's happier to get it more fuel.
And that's what we're striving for, is more efficiency, right? I mean, you had a lot of people in this big sky over that period. I mean, enormous amount of them. Yeah, so that's good news.
We still owe RSCI $200,000, and that's strategic. That's retainage for keeping them on the hook for some things they can deliver now, such as O&M manuals and record drawings. We'll give them $100,000 once we have that stuff. And then we'll still keep $100,000 in our pocket because they still have to come back in spring and plant grass, seed, have a final polish on the job. We also have pond 2 clean out, left to do. I don't know if you have any updates. I know Kate's been getting budgetary cost proposals from other firms capable of cleaning out pond 2. We have a very large number from our, sort of, go-to Synagro that did it last time, that we thought maybe we could do better if we got around and got some other folks interested. So Kate's working on that. Eventually we'll have to work with Johnny and Adam and pull the trigger on getting somebody under contract, when the weather breaks, getting pond 2 cleaned out in this time.
Part of that project is also a relining aspect as well, so we're gonna reline it up there.
For the clean out portion, Denali was heavily recommended by some other people within our company in South Dakota, and they got back to us with a quote that was significantly lower than Synagro's, so that's good news. The other ones were more commensurate with Synagro's, so that's the one I'm most interested in looking into, so hopefully we can learn more about that.
Yeah, I think, that'll end up being something that's loosely, softly negotiated, with a firm that we select with you probably at this point in Denali's, all over, Southwest Colorado. They're great, and just getting down to brass tacks and getting a contract and a schedule. Adam had a really good write-up on the centrifuge procurement. That's not part of the project, but at one time it was a bit alternate. Couldn't afford it on the day, set it aside. Ron got some money from BizRad to pay for at least the centrifuge, so it's arriving in March-ish. But the centrifuge is only one, it's the heart of the whole thing, but there's ancillary equipment we'll have to procure and help get a contractor to build at least the stand and the HVAC and plumbing and get it installed. So that'll be this year's challenge. The plant is generating a lot more solids than the old plant. I think in part, we were seeing more solids pass through that SPR and end up in pond 2, which is why we got to clean up pond 2 twice overall. But it's also, it just grows more bacteria faster and retains pretty much every single bacterial cell stays in that plant. So I think that's been the most stressful on the operations team and dealing with biosolids and keeping that no filter press that's only 2 years old now running. So that's the plant construction startup optimization update. If you have any questions. Okay. Reuse booster station. Kelsey's helping Adam and Western Industrial and kind of your team figure out how to get those up and running. And I think that's the next month or two will be a big part of your day, fortunately.
Yeah, the pumps and motors are on site as of last week. We're doing some plumbing work this week. Electrical is mostly done. Working with James on IO checks and making sure that the new PLC can accommodate the operation. So yeah, we're within the next few weeks of hopefully moving some water. Yeah.
So that's the station over here below the ponds that pumps it up to YC and Spanish Peaks. The goal there was to get something that's more run of the mill, easier to get parts for, maybe a smidge more capacity in the short term until we figure out long term what to do with Mountain Booster Station, getting that built, and then we refinagle these pumps in here to boost the whole pipeline's capacity. That Mid Mountain is on hold. We canceled the project with SRF. We'll come back to it someday when it's more budgetable, and then more necessary, more critical, time critical. Canyon, working on 60% and headed towards construction manager procurement. I don't know, Mace, you want to come up here or jump in here, but rough patch with DEQ on a deviation request where we were wanting to put both the reuse pipeline and the raw wastewater pipeline coming up from the canyon in the same trench. Without any sort of exotic trench design, they don't like that. They want 10 feet of separation normally between all potable water pipelines and all raw sewage pipelines. This is not potable water. This is reuse water, so going into irrigation or rapid filtration basins. So we thought surely they will let us put both pipes in the same trench without additional requirements to protect against any cross contamination there, and they're not budging much. 3 members of the project team went up there Thursday, so this was too fresh to get into the board update. We're not giving up yet. It will cost the project more money, basically, to separate those pipelines more, do kind of an odd trench design that DEQ thinks will lead to less chance of cross contamination. In our opinion, doesn't matter. I mean, it's technical, but both pipes are under so much pressure that if there was a break, the whole thing's going to be submerged, whether it's 2 feet away or 10 feet away or 2 feet higher, doesn't really matter. So we might need to get owners involved or stakeholders involved a little bit to push one more time against them, or it's probably going to be on the order of a couple $1 million more expensive.
Fair synopsis there. I think the Highway 64 corridor is kind of our most hurdles in terms of that single trench. That's ideal. That's cost savings. That's logistics. And I think we'll keep trying with DEQ to, I guess, be logical on that front, but somewhat out of the team's control. We also have an MDT coordination meeting come up, a Forest Service element. So that corridor has the most variables. So that's our focus for the coming months as an overall design team.
Yeah, like the location of the stations and the general alignment is coming together. Our focus would be one more good run at DEQ before we chalk it up as a loss and change the design. But I don't think it'll change the alignment of the pipeline significantly, other than some trench design specifics.
Is there a mechanism to put them within the same trench and satisfy their concerns?
You mean like putting flowable fill in there or something? There's things we can do. They're all money. They're all increased costs. And that's frustrating because, as Brian knows, and folks that are deeply involved in the finances, that financial model is very tight. There's a small window of opportunity to make this whole thing work. Yeah. And so every $1 million that we add to the cost of the project hurts that model.
Yeah, doubling the trenches is redundantly increasing the cost. All right, have they vocalized what their concerns are with the reuse water?
Yeah,
contaminated.
Yeah, they, in their opinion, there is a high risk of E. coli getting into the reuse line, and there being an irrigation sprinkler that somebody puts their face in for whatever reason, even though it's signed, they will have signage. And these pipes are jointless. This is HDPE fused pipe, so there's not like a high risk of leakage. If either pipe ruptures, we will know immediately because they're carrying high pressures, and we'll see that show up down there in the trench, right? It would be wet at the surface pretty quickly, and we would lose pressure on our monitoring. But There's one individual in particular that doesn't seem interested in budging. And we've explained that there's a potential that this drives project costs up to the point where we, as a community, can afford it. That would be a big shame. They go back to, hey, it's not my job to worry about it when they start trying to worry about public safety. They're not, that's not in their charter to worry about. In my opinion, it's in their, should be in their charter to worry about killing the project or not. But
One variable still on the table, is the canyon has been planning on like 60% groundwater discharge, 40% land application to hit kind of that 2-to-1 ratio for as long as possible. I see potential to take land application off the table if that's the whole crux of this separate trench. I think the project could navigate a groundwater discharge only. We'd like to keep land application in the toolbox as another mechanism to dispose and a zero nutrient to the river and the aquifer. So we want that tool in the toolbox, but if it's kind of the crux of the situation of keeping a single trench and keeping the project affordable, I think we can navigate a groundwater discharge only. So I'm waiting to go down that pathway until one more meeting with DEQ.
It'd be cost prohibitive to maintain that model.
Yeah,
That's the problem.
yeah,
I mean, the numbers are just so high after our last 2 meetings.
yeah.
and we've offered up less expensive, belt and suspenders kind of things to warn us if there's cross contamination monitoring. Right. Just not getting anywhere with them. Before this is all said and done, they would have another, basically a hearing where the owner would be at the table. And we can bring other stakeholders and take one hard run at trying to move them off this ball and see if we're successful.
Would there be some mechanism where you could have a sensor essentially that detects the leak and then shuts down surface water discharge?
Yeah,
I mean, that's
how
pretty
fancy
fail
that gets
safe.
or not, it would be money. You know,
Right. But a lot
sort
less
of a
than
$50,000
trenches.
addition,
Yeah.
you could tell when TDS goes up or something, put some monitoring like that. We will have pressure monitoring on there.
Mhm.
It just doesn't seem to be swaying one person individually. And it's a 3-person board. I'm not sure it's 2 out of 3. I think it might have to be a hung jury type situation where you need all 3. But we'll keep trying. And if it does have to add, a couple of $1 million to the financial model, then we'll rework that with Ryan and the Canyon and keep grinding on how to make it affordable and make it happen. District Engineering Services, E. coli monitoring deviation requests. Are we done with that? Do we have
I think we are.
approval in hand?
You guys seen approval?
I think we've given them everything we need
But there's no show on
to
that.
get final approval, and we're getting signals that we'll get final approval, but maybe we don't have that final signed document yet. That's also the word of 3. And they've asked us for continuously more information. Which they already have over 25 years, and it's just we're dealing with new staff that aren't as familiar with it. But I got the confidence that we're going to get that one. We provided a technical memorandum supporting you revising your internal standards on the water use and wastewater generation to 82 gallons per day per SFE, including the data. Johnny and I thought you might want a month to.
Oh, we have to, because I gotta get with Susan, because she wanted it done by resolution, so we gotta get that put together. But we have the final draft of the technical. So in the board packet for review.
And I guess between you and Susan and I, if there's any questions, you can review the document over the next month. Come to next month's board meeting with questions and discussion items and then that's when you would be able to have a draft resolution or,
We can have the draft resolution and then if there's no comments over the next 30, we can have it as an action item to approve.
any reason to have any sort of subcommittee meetings or
I don't think so.
so now and then.
We've talked about it enough over the last 6 months that. No, it's coming. We just gotta do the final preparation for it.
Good. Other work we did this month. Was giving Firelight Meadows, a very draft. Cost estimate of all the infrastructure necessary to annex them for water, wastewater and reuse water. My understanding is they needed that to talk to DEQ about whether they're, which alternative they're going to pursue. It was not presented as a, this is the final number. Explain that annexation is a case by case, essentially negotiation.
What did that budget come in? I know it was just a, what was the budget for Firelight?
7 million-ish
70 million for the drain fields, and then I think we added,
included.
I can just pull it up.
Yeah, I just wonder rough, I mean, I'm always divided into what, 240 owners or 300 SFEs. Start thinking about those numbers. A lot.
It is. It is. There's some value there to you all for reuse, and there's some value to the whole community for getting their system off your aquifer, off the community's aquifer. So it's like some soft costs and soft values that should be considered, but yes, it's a big number for a relatively small development. Then we have our project budget breakdown in the matrix and Salinity is now up and has its own budget, which we needed to do to get that off the district engineering services work, because it's a fair amount of work and it's a kind of its own thing, so separating that out. Ryan continues to work on his rate study. He's about 2/3 of the way through that. We kind of, I think, in a holding pattern at the moment, before he finishes that up and presents to you again, maybe in March or April.
I was thinking it was next month, but we gotta follow up with Ryan. We've been throwing around some additional ideas. Working on some other stuff. As part of that too, so.
CIP will come into play with that as well. So be good to have at least a framework with CIP before we plug in the rate study. So don't wanna go back to November or October.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll probably have them in the first, at least the first meeting in February.
We did have an irrigators meeting last week that went well. I think Adam is sitting really pretty right now with the reservoirs and
We need to start moving some water here in the next, for sure, but we're doing just fine.
has enough time to get YC1 installed and back up and running and YC was happy. I think they made 30 million gallons of snow this fall.
Yeah, 25.
25.
Yeah.
Lowest nitrogen they've seen in that water yet, so some of that's from this plant, some of it's from getting onto cleaned out last time. Should continue to get better and better. Eventually, hopefully, Spanish Peaks snowmaker gets their permit and they're close.
You guys know that water was all went to a lease last year. They
That's
starting to spread it around.
Peter, nodding his head.
Place they have snowmaking,
Same.
or snowmaking to make with reclaimed water. Is
Mhm.
in the police.
Is, yeah, okay, gotcha. So basically all goes to that.
Same bounds of the original permit.
Gotcha.
So Scott, are they able to measure the nitrogen levels on their end as well? So we're tracking it at multiple points.
They have to per permit, because that's the, that's where the rubber hits the road or the nitrogen hits the soil. And
Yeah, I guess that makes sense. I didn't realize that.
And it may change, from what we send to them when it sits in the pond before what they use, so. There'd be a delta there and they have to track it from the blend of the two.
Right.
And the time that it sits in the pond.
That's it.
Ready for the canyon update?
Let's get some energy in this room. Jeez. Got a lot of things going on here, a lot of positive momentum. Base, bring it on.
On the canyon side, we're amending our discharge permit application submittal to include more groundwater discharge. So we're almost proactively addressing potentially this risk of not being able to land apply. That's all by accident, but we're shooting for as many options as possible for groundwater disposal. And we'll navigate kind of the pros, cons, cost benefit as we kind of see where DEQ lands on this single trench variable. So that's good news on that front is we are not fully reliant on land application, but it'd be ideal to have both. Key aspect moving forward is the Canyon District Board signed the same ordinance you all signed the previous month. I'll get that to you, Amy, so you got it. So we're running with kind of the contractor procurement, paperwork, legwork that will run parallel to the design process. And the end of goal is 60% design package and an RFP package that we can be procuring a contractor come summer. And the value there is get firmed up prices in June, July. So when we're feeding you costs as an engineering group, we have probably 20% error bar in our numbers, and coming out of that exercise, we'll feel much better about the numbers we're hearing. So if we're saying this dual trench might add $2 million, there might be a $10 million delta in what we see in bids and numbers. So firming up these costs, and then with the contractor on board, we can figure out where that right project, right decision is. So that's all moving forward. Both AE2S on the Highway 64 corridor, WGM on the 191 corridor have that design package coming together in about a May timeline, and then kick into contract procurement with that running parallel. Like Scott said, key variable is that single trench for Highway 64. I also want to emphasize MDTs in that picture, Forest Services in that picture. So that corridor just has more agency involvement, and that adds variables. So we're trying to prioritize all that coordination in the next 2 months and get to where any other pitfalls, we're addressing them proactively. So that's our priority. We do need to be scheduling a joint committee meeting, which I've circulated with the members of that. And in my head, it's the two districts need to be coordinating on pretty much a monthly frequency and a focus on conveyance, disposal, or collection, disposal, SFE tally across 5-year, 10-year, 25-year type of what is that progression. So that feeds into your financial model. So that'll be our focus to bring to that meeting is here's our best estimate of what would be turned on day one versus 2030, 2035. So we're working with Lazy J, Buxty 4, Quarry, all those properties in service area 4 to get as tight of a day one projection and as tight of a max build out projection to bring that to that meeting. And then our latest and greatest disposal estimates on a 1 million gallons per year scale of what can we expect to be able to provide at a 2-to-1 ratio versus a 1.5 to 1 or whatever that magic number is. So we plan to bring those numbers to that joint committee meeting and build off of the one from December. And then what I heard from the BizRad meeting was we need a MOU developing that starts to talk dollars and cents for the two districts. So that come ballot 2026, we know exactly what we're asking. So I'd say that's my near-term focus on behalf of the Canyon District.
I think that meeting was kind of a game changer for us. We are in we have to be in lockstep with the Canyon District. And just to be clear, we didn't know we were on their list of projects with the Big Sky Water and Sewerage District. We were actually identified as a $15 million request for plan expansion. We couldn't have really moved forward with that without a budget. One thing that came out of it was just how important it is that we stay dovetailed with the Canyon on this. One modification I made there is we at the district said, hey, we need an MOU this year, and we need it with the BizRat, and we need it with the Canyon. It's complicated, but I think it's attainable, and I think it's a partnership with you. And what really came out of it for me was saying, boy, this disposal is such a high priority that is one of many priorities. But disposal, as we move forward, along with something that I had talked to you about was paper water rights as well. These are all in different lanes as moving forward, but right now that MOU needs to be a top priority between the two entities. Because we have to know how we're going to finance that in our 5-year CIP. We really can't do a rate evaluation without knowing what our portion and what the agreement is with BizRat. I mean, it's somewhat temporary until we know what those are. But it's a great meeting. A lot of progress on all these topics over the last month. Kind of surprising. The passive meetings, the ones that you just said, hey, can we just sidebar on this? But this one in particular bumped to the top of the list for me personally after hearing BizRat talk about this, their needs and what's happening over the next 5 years. It's going to be competitive for these funds, especially when you get into bonding. So, but it's positive news.
Yeah, and I'd add that BizRat wants the co-solution. They want this to be a joint effort, best for the community. So we're staying down that train of thought, and I do think there's a win-win between the two districts. We just got to put the pencil to paper and figure it out.
Kevin's summary was 2026 is the year of water and sewer for bonding. I think that was the quote. Yep. But he also called the two of us up there to say, are we all on the same page here for Q&A? And it was good, but it really bumped it up. But it bumped that disposal up. That's the one I'm looking at. I think we all need to assess. We have the disposal for these grand plans.
So is the MOU in development is Susan who's leading that?
I would say there is an interlocal agreement draft that Tara DePue and Susan kind of have been moving, I would say, but there's an MOU element that is fundamentally dollars, cents, commitments, whether those two end up being dovetailed into one document. I actually don't know. I think that's a joint committee conversation of what is that structure and what do we need by X date? Is it an interlocal agreement? Is it an MOU, or is it?
I think the first step is to start pursuing these internal meetings between the Canyon and the district. Then just understand what the framework is. It's evolving. I mean, every month this is evolving. Look at the update on some of these expenses moving forward. But we need to, again, have one solid package to go to the BizRat with, and then we negotiate with BizRat. The interlocal agreement, I think, it needs a number of modifications. So let's get our house in order internally with this, make sure we all know what we're doing and what our options are. And then we go to them. I'd rather have at least a framework to run by this board in the next 6 months. I don't want to wait a year personally after hearing that, what came out of that meeting. So.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
As I'm always lurking in the background, I just emailed Tara and let her know that we need to get that an MOU type document specific for financing done in the next 8 months, so it's ready for BizRat in 2026.
Great. Thank you, Susan. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks for attending. Yeah, it was really
We move it faster.
it was a positive meeting.
There's probably elements that Scott just asked, does that slow us down on the CMGC? I think there'll be elements that we might have to have almost a sidebar agreement or to keep the CMGC moving advancing, and then have a comprehensive MOU more on that 8-month scale. So we'll just have to be tracking, these inner workings sub-agreements potentially.
Yeah, I think Mace just said earlier, the goal is to get the construction manager, general contractor on board in May or June.
Yeah, the earlier the better to firm up numbers.
So we wouldn't have the MOU finished, we wouldn't have maybe even the interlocal agreement finished, so that contract would just need to give them heads up that it may not happen, but we want them on the team.
Yeah.
And maybe it's $100,000 sort of starter engagement with them, just so they're on the team. But if it doesn't move forward, the contract braces them for that.
I don't see it as a binding MOU. I mean, that's what an MOU basically is. Are we on the same page? And there have been a lot of changes that were surprises in the last 3-4 months. This is just to say financially, great example, the 60-40 ratio. We need to confirm that and update that. That's all the way back to 2018. What is the 60-40 ratio with what's going on? How does it apply to the district if the canyon's in the district? So there's a lot of mechanical things we can be working on at the same time, and these should be viewed concurrently. It's not like we're gonna spend 6 months working on our relationship and then go to that. We just need to keep aligned. This is about alignment. And be competitive for those funds. These are big numbers, man. Start getting into 60, 90, $100 million. We just need to know where we are at the table and what bucket they're coming out of, the 1% or the 3%. So.
Last item note, the canyon is proceeding with the TED model of breaking the ice with the Gallatin County Commissioners, and that TED model down in the canyon starts to be this financial engine of a similar scale as resort tax. So there might be, I guess, some support letters or some requests to help move that along. So stay tuned there, but the Canyon District is advancing that.
Is that just in the canyon or does it include all of Gallatin County?
This particular exercise is a canyon focus exercise. I know BizRad's kind of exploring a broader all of Gallatin County, but this one we're keeping focused of kind of within the bounds of the Canyon Sewer District. So it's a direct apples to apples of this is the infrastructure necessary to support this TED. That could expand at some point, but that's how we're approaching it right now.
Anything else for me?
Mr.
All right,
Chair,
thanks.
Mr. Chair. Guy Olsenser here from Waterkeeper.
Yes, Guy.
Hey, wanted to chime in. May I have a moment?
Sure.
Well, given everyone's talking about the MOUs and all kinds of good infrastructure connections and planning, I would be remiss not to say that my organization's main concern remains that we do not yet have an understanding that discharge at the current levels of treatment is in fact going to be both legally or scientifically defensible. And I want to make this point and go back to conversations, Mr. Chair, that you and me and Mike Duquesnoy have had over the years. And in the end, we're talking about levels of treatment. And we have retained different scientific experts that are doing a hydrologic analysis in conjunction with what we are all expecting to come out from the Bureau of Mines and Geology. And the long and short is I don't see any legal reality where this new discharge permit is treated as anything other than the functional equivalent of a Clean Water Act point source discharge permit under the Supreme Court precedent. And what that really means for this district and for the Canyon District is that we need to be talking about the viability of that second level of treatment and potentially dual phase treatment that AE2S did design in the original game plan here. And when I'm hearing all this talk about MOUs, infrastructure planning, and what do we need to be really putting on the table, I think we really should be considering, and the board should be instructing its engineering team to say, what does it take if in fact we are forced to look at a higher level of treatment? How quickly can you get that online? And what does that look like? Because based on the hydrology that we're looking at and based on the nutrient load, I don't see any world where we're able to play a nutrient credit game where you're going to get a discharge permit up front and then be able to work slowly and progressively in good faith on reducing septic loads. It's not going to cut it underneath the requirements of the law. And instead, I would offer the cleanest path with the less controversy and the most defensibility is going to be saying, how do we make that effluent as clean as possible? Because it's going to be treated as a point source discharge.
Well, thank you, Guy. I'd like to see what Scott has to say to that. You know, you're at the wheel of this treatment, so thoughts on that, Scott?
The additional treatment that Guy is referring to was for this building over here where we would put it in this aquifer and withdraw it and serve it up as potable water. That's kind of the catch-22, and Guy's aware of this, is if you go to that level, at that point, you might as well drink the water because it's drinking water. And in fact, you may still not meet the nitrogen and phosphorus criteria that, if it's a point source and they don't allow any dilution, you know, you'd be looking at 0.3 total nitrogen and 0.3 total phosphorus. Those kind of numbers are harder to obtain than drinking water, quality water is. You could have that level of TN and TP and still drink it. So at that point, it becomes what's the best use of that water? If we had to go to that level of treatment, why not just keep it up here and put it in the aquifer, or maybe it becomes a drinking water source for the canyon someday. I think what Guy's referring to and is essentially he's doing parallel path work on whether or not his hydrogeologists and BMG believe that to be a groundwater discharge or a surface water discharge. And I believe, you know, I have to defer to WGM at this point because they're in charge of the groundwater permitting down there on what their opinion is. And so I think it's a TBD, yet to be determined. Till we have that, you know, permit in hand, no, we don't know how it's going to come down exactly yet. Okay.
Yeah, on the groundwater discharge from each side, we're working closely with DEQ and giving them as robust of a submittal as we can over the coming year. And at the end of it all, we're not gonna be able to check every hypothetical box. I think that's where we hand off to DEQ and see what variables where they might expand upon the analysis that we're feeding them and some of the nuances that Guy might be referencing. But we're taking a really poor situation down there of septics mixed with potable wells, and we're substantially reducing the risk and the load. So the project as a whole is going to be a net improvement. The semantics or the legal stuff that I can't track all the moving parts, I don't know the answer there.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd love to respond directly here for the board's edification, if I might.
Sure, go ahead.
Well, I fundamentally disagree with the idea that we're considering this to be a semantics argument, as Mace just said. What we're really talking about is what the law requires and what gives you surety that you're not going to cause and contribute to continued pollution problems in the river. And whether we want to talk about this as something that we're adding any amount, when you add any amount of a pollutant of concern, and that means nitrogen and phosphorus, and it goes through.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry, and Guy, I hate to interrupt, but we understand your legal position. I think you've heard our engineering position. And while I appreciate the conversation and I think it needs to continue, and I agree with you, it needs to continue. We're kind of hijacking the meeting on a topic that's not on the agenda. So I have concerns that it's being redirected to a topic that's not been noticed.
Understood. And board chair, I'd of course welcome an opportunity to come in person and discuss these matters. If you wanted to put it on, I did see the agenda and see that you were talking about the updates for the canyon, and likewise you're talking about new annexations, which all of which are predicated upon this plan of development and things here. I think my organization is consistently engaged in good faith, and I'm trying to simply share a perspective and make sure it goes on the public record.
Sure. Well, I think it's best if we table this for now. I heard you say you'd like to see this on the agenda, basically, so that you could discuss in person, and I think that's a great avenue. And I just want to be clear on one thing. This will be a deep dive. You know, this is an update on where the process is. So if we can put that on the next agenda and you can make it, that'd be great. How's that sound?
Done.
We appreciate your notice, and I think everyone here is aware of your situation. Just take one step further. It's all about disposal, and we're solution oriented. So thanks for attending virtually and bringing this, or not just bringing it, but reminding the board of some of the history on this. We'll see you next month. Okay. Anything else from you, Mason?
You don't mind.
All right. All right, we'll go right into, good timing, Dick. I was hoping you'd be here for the Spanish Peaks time. Did your car not start?
Oh, good.
Okay. Let's get into legal. Spanish Peaks, annexation agreements. We didn't have it as a committee report. I'll open the door while Dick gets his hands warm and settles in. We did have a subcommittee meeting. We've had a lot of activity on this. Feel like we're making progress.
Do we have any updates on the Northwest Energy?
Oh, I was gonna jump in at the end since.
Mr. Chairman, just, I don't know if you saw my chat. I gotta hop off in 5 minutes. I would tell you, I appreciate everybody's patience with me. I frankly stepped back from you guys at the holidays and then promptly got sick on the 1st. So I haven't done any work on either of these, although I've been in communication with people to see that we need to, with both of them, we need, per our commitments, need to move forward, start considering drafts. And I do say that in light of, as well as, I'm not sure I'm fully up to speed on Mr. Alson's discussion and his perspective on how to proceed with these. So I guess I would tell you from the legal standpoint, I haven't done anything. I guess I'll dive back in tomorrow.
Okay, we're both out of sequence a little here. We have the Northwest Energy, but I will say this, Susan, you're gonna jump off the call?
Correct.
Okay, not to diminish the impact of legal. I think we had one of the more productive meetings we've had as a subcommittee with John Olson and crew. And I think moving forward, we'll have some input for you to continue that momentum. So no apologies needed. I hope you're healed up and I hope we have a really productive meeting in February. How's that sound?
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll rewind. My bad, not to reduce Al's good news, Northwest Energy, and then we will get into Spanish Peaks and all the good things. Al.
My report is fairly brief. I know the title work has begun on the transaction. I sent an email to you guys just to see if we had any information that might be able to speed up that process. And don't know if we do or don't, but we can get that to security title. That'll keep us moving. I don't have any specific timelines because it's working its way through the county, but there has been regular communication from Northwestern Energy just updating us that we are moving along. And the fact that we're approaching title work means we're getting close.
There were a lot of emails flying around. So I got to say this again, I'm going to use the word partners. Northwest Energy as a partner is great. I wish more deals like this would come along. And as we keep talking about water source and distribution and everything we're doing, this becomes even more important. I can't imagine if we didn't take on that aggressive approach back as we did on this transaction with the BSA. So,
well, it's a creative approach, right? With the trade, and I think it's effective for both entities. So
it's a heck of a negotiation. You know. Thanks for staying on it, Al.
You're welcome.
Okay. Did I miss anything else? Good. No, we can get out to Spanish Peaks, and Dick, you're settled in. That was just my intro. We'll start it. Let's go. Spanish Peaks. We don't have Susan on. Any comments from you, Dick? I know you've worked hard on this and really been looking at the information.
Doing good.
Okay. I would just say, you know, I just want to remind everyone, it's been a year. Spanish Peaks has been patient and we've worked hard on this, but this board inherited a very subjective agreement, extremely subjective in the sense that without a crystal ball, you just don't have any objective agreement. It's going to be subjective. And of course, you can't give someone a permit and then say, oh, by the way, you exceeded your agreement. Now you can't turn on your water and sewer tomorrow. So this is complicated, but this, I think we broke through a log jam on this. And I think that other agreements will fall into play with this. This will be a template for the future. I think we're in the red zone with this. I think Terry brought up some great points towards the end, and a lot of this will be on Terry's plate to update the board and work on some of the pick six issues. And
Yeah,
I'll let you
yeah.
address that, because I think we'll have a comprehensive package by the next meeting to say, hey, this is what the subcommittee is recommending or considering. Let's get the board at the table. That's it.
Yeah, one of the issues within the Yellowstone Club agreement with, originally there was one party that owned all three properties. Now we've got three different owners with the properties. And one of the complications in there is the Yellowstone Club special improvement charge, which our side is working through and figuring out where we're going to stand on that with respect to how much we're going to pay with how far out. I mean, in the original agreement it was 1,900 SFEs. We're talking about expanding that. So our side needs to review that under the agreement and come up with a position that we'll take going forward, because we do have other parties now that will be affected by it. And we have to get that settled.
It might be useful to explain why Yellowstone Club is getting that SIC. What it's paying for.
The special improvement charge is security that we hold. So it's a special improvement charge, just like our plant investment charge, that when a permit comes in and someone builds based on the SFEs, we apply a special improvement charge. And we hold that and retain that until the Yellowstone Club completes their obligations under the original agreement. So it's security that we're holding, but it's their money. And the original agreement was based on 1,900 SFEs, and we're now talking about expanding those SFEs. And whether or not that special improvement charge will continue to apply to the expanded number of SFEs that we're putting on the table, or if we're going to hold it to the original 1,900 SFEs. So we've got Spanish Peaks, we've got Flatiron, and then we've got the Yellowstone Club. And so another question that came up that we discussed was that, do we need to talk to the Yellowstone Club and have them involved in this agreement? And that was something that we would be putting to Susan, and we will complete that in our February meeting, I suspect.
We need a legal opinion.
Yeah.
Right out of the gates, first and foremost. And of course, you look at the spirit of the agreement. And as Terry said, it's 1,900 SFEs. These are accountants. He says, you have this, you have yours. If it was a security-based charge or allocation, then we would have the opportunity to evaluate the Yellowstone Club infrastructure, which they're very close with. We have that one issue that we did the tolling agreement on to say, hey, can we postpone pond expansion? Which I think was a great idea. When I hear 25 million gallons are going out into snowmaking today, that means that that's a 25 million gallon pond that we don't need to hold on October 1st. So we have a really good checkpoint here to evaluate that. You need to basically update Susan. She needs to give us a legal opinion. And then John, we've got to negotiate a resolution. And if it, and the key for me is hearing this was implemented for security with infrastructure. Well, if we can get that level of security, we just want to make sure that, as you said, we get our pick charge consistent with the ratepayer. That's all you're saying to this board. We need to treat every hookup after this as we treat a ratepayer. That's the goal.
Yeah, it was
Without sacrificing security.
Yeah, the 1,900 SFEs that we gave up represented $6.6 million that the district was not going to get. So that was consideration in the agreement that we gave up. What we're talking about now is expanding that. And so we need to have our attorney give us a legal opinion whether or not where that stands.
Yeah, it's a little bit confusing because we're on flow based.
Yeah.
By the way, we post meeting, we said, hey, let's go to SFEs. Had a meeting, no, let's not go to SFEs, and let's create the framework for flow based on all these agreements. And it's positive, it's evolving. It's not like we're doing a 180. It's like, what's best for both parties? And I mean, what's best for the ratepayers? This was a better option for the ratepayers. I think Dick, when it was apparent that it was the best option for the ratepayers. So. We had to explore every option. Okay, so that's Spanish Peaks. John, did you have anything you wanted to comment?
No, I just appreciate the opportunity to work with you guys. I think, like you said, after 5 years of, beating this issue, I think we're finally at the finish line, so. Well done by the board, and we'll hopefully have something, a modified annexation agreement with you guys next week or the following week.
That 5 years was a productive period that was necessary because a lot of this consideration is based on flow rates. The montage coming online, 3 years of flow. So it wasn't as if we were spinning wheels for 5 years. We were gathering data, and it gave us the opportunity to feel comfortable enough to move forward with the framework or the foundation and the framework for this agreement, which we're going to have to do with other entities as well. They're not unusual. Annexation is a key component in this. We keep going back to the agreement, but what triggered this was the annexation. And as a reminder, this will be bundled into the annexation agreement, just like these others.
John, you said you might have a new annexation, a revised when?
Well, as soon as I can. It's heavily dependent on legal counsel's time and attention. So I'm hoping, Gina and I talked on Friday. We're gonna get together today and at least talk about the changes that we need to implement to what we previously had submitted. So I'm hoping by the end of this week, but realistically, it'll probably be next week.
Thank you.
Great. And as a reminder, we have 4 annexation agreements that have been submitted, 2 within the last month.
Yes, sir.
Yep. So we have to have some consistency here. Now we have Flatiron, Spanish Peaks, Cold Smoke, and Boyne.
Thought there was another one in there.
Some of you.
Fire department, and then there's a.
It's easy to lose track.
Yeah.
So fire department is 6.
Just 4 new ones.
There's 4 new ones plus the
Yeah.
2 current. So
That's what. It's a new chapter with water and sewer district. It's never happened. I don't know how many only had like 2 annexation requests historically. So just keep in mind, when we talk about these agreements or requests about annexation, and we have to, consider both the agreement and the annexation, because we're going to resolve the issues with that. So it's good to establish a template or consideration. All right. Johnny, the next step, we have Cold Smoke.
we don't have any updates on Cold Smoke. That was been a busy few weeks, so the Susan being stuff we're doing.
So, Cold Smoke, I'm glad you're here, first of all, but we always want to be able to move the ball in between meetings. You guys have got a lot on your plate, enormous amount. I'd just say consider, to eliminate any confusion, who's at the table in this negotiation so we can streamline it and move forward. And maybe consider the idea that we have an in-person meeting with those parties, yourself, Grider, yourself, Dave, sitting at the table, attorneys online, water and sewer district team, and just have one meeting to really just see if we can move the ball on this thing. Again, this is about annexation, and we just need to follow those guidelines. I think we're going to get this thing through. We just have to understand it. There's just not enough to understand quite yet on the infrastructure side to this, but I think this is going to help us to start moving forward the way we are with Spanish Peaks, although they're different with the conditions. But that would be my suggestion, is see if we can get all parties at the table, because we have these subcommittee meetings. Then it's like, who are we dealing with on this issue? Who specifically? And then it affects you, Dave. As we've said in the past, it impacts the housing trust because it's expense or negotiation. Let's get everybody at the same table, 2 attorneys on the screen. That's my suggestion moving forward. Anybody have any feedback on that?
That sounds great. Are you just suggesting outside of a regular public board meeting, basically?
Yeah, I think it would be best to have a side meeting.
Great.
I just think, look, you got an enormous amount on your plate. What you've accomplished with BizRat and everything, extraordinary. But if this is something that you need in the next few months, and that's something we don't have to do it this next month. It's in your court, but I think that's the framework of what we need to do, because we've got a lot of different moving parts with this annexation agreement. That'd be great. And I think providing some of the engineering and the master planning, what this is going to be a part of, we just can't take it as one small piece. We have to understand what this is going to do down the line as well, so that the district doesn't impose a condition that doesn't support future development. We want to do it's the win-win. Want to factor in the town center. How's this going to affect? So that's just an idea. I know last thing we all need is another subcommittee meeting, but this is on the table. Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. New business. Johnny, take it away.
As we mentioned before, we've got 4 new annexation petitions, so everything that's come in that has been told to me over the last year and a half was coming. So like we said, we got Boeing, we've got Flatiron, and then we've got the fire department with their new training ground. They're at the end of the Riverview project. They got watered by a main extension currently, but they're planning on putting Fire Station 1 on that same property. We've got an individual from the mountain at the tail end of
Summit View Phase 1, one individual property owner that also submitted an annexation petition.
So
Summit View.
Yeah,
Phase
they're
1, Conklin, Patricia Conklin.
yeah, they're at the end, up on the mountain, way up.
Oh, I know where
that section.
I think it could be 2. You think it's 2?
Yeah, I was going to say phase 1 because you and I just did so much work on phase 1.
Yeah, it's up by the little minor subdivision that Doug Bing did.
Got it.
Is that where the chairlift goes up to?
Yeah.
After some-
Top terminal of the
Sorry,
Cascade Lift. It's exactly where it is. It's up at that frown. It's up at your gate.
It's
The
outside.
Summit View. Yeah. Okay. Again, as a reminder, so it doesn't confuse anyone, each one of these has very specific conditions to consider. And are you coming to the table with your own SFEs? Or do we have excess capacity to support an annexation? This is going to be interesting. There are.
Is that a new property?
No.
So it's got a well and a septic now?
It was approved for well and septic.
Shared well.
It's a shared well and septic.
Okay. Anything else you want to comment on those annexations?
Just that individual, I gotta dig into that one a little bit more because of where it's at and our place of use and also our boundary. And then, of course, the infrastructure up there, we've got a lot of improvement to do on the mountain. So I'm not entirely sure that this would be a good one to accept because it's at the tail end, at the furthest reach of our mountain, and in pressures and Beehive, we've already got a fire pump from that house explosion last year that got burned up. So I know the flows and pressures and stuff may not be suitable to extend that out. So I gotta do a little bit more legwork on that one, but.
Okay. Well, sewer and
So
water connection.
last month, we accepted an annexation petition. Do we need to accept these or are we not?
As I get, I gotta do the criteria and make sure it all fits before. I just wanted to let the board know that we do have 4 more. 2 of them has been there since November. And then we just got the other 2, so. Kind of prioritizing them as they come in, like I had 4 tomorrow with the fire department. I probably won't be more until March till I look at it. So we got some higher priority ones that we need to get through. So
I think it all starts with Johnny evaluating the engineering. And then you have your checklist for what I just said. You're coming to the table.
Yep.
Excess capacity. Where is it even?
and I got to write up the synopsis or summary so I can get it to Susan, and Susan can give her legal opinion and then bring that to the board for you guys to decide to accept it and move it forward. So.
And this ties in, it's very interesting. This ties into a comment or discussion we had that I addressed at Spanish Peaks about on-site septic or sewer systems. And the idea was you cannot have a sewer system within the district. Well, that's partially correct. Because if you're within 500 feet of the Big Sky Water and Sewer District system, then you can't have it. Is that correct? So that's clarification that it's a 500 feet DEQ requirement. It's not a Big Sky Water and Sewer District.
It's 3 or 5, I'd have to double check.
It's 5, almost DQ. So I want to clarify that with Spanish Peaks because they applied for some of these on-site septic systems. No, you can't have it. Well, no, you can't have it if it's within 500 feet. So, and this one may be the same. Might the interesting part to this, Al, is if that lot was subdivided. It's not in the district, but it's within 500 feet of a public facility. Then it might just trigger a little more pressure. But all right.
Permits, I had one submission for remodel in Sweetgrass Hills, which was a negative SFE calculation.
Negative.
Yeah.
Like those. All right. All right. February 18th, next meeting. I just want to make sure any general correspondence, I'm going to read my agenda a little closely. It's done. General, anything correspondence?
So good news. I know we had this conversation. Our place of use application was put on pause because GNRC wanted consideration for the Middle Fork utilities and because Middle Fork properties, am I saying that right? Put in their petition for annexation. Now that we officially have that, we're able to move our application pre-submittal forward again, so.
Did you encompass the entire property?
We've got a map that Amy's working on that when I put the summary together of all the stuff that we will have.
And you'll communicate with the Flatiron guys and say, hey, you guys are right with this?
Yep.
Yeah, I think it's all good. It's just you want to make sure it's not in conflict with any representation.
So yeah, our place of use application that was going in with WGM was paused there for a little bit because they wanted consideration. And now that we have that, and they know we're going to be moving forward with that annexation discussion, that as we can now submit our pre-app.
Would like to stay on that question of paper. We have adequate paper permitting for everything what we're planning. That's it, especially as we go into these annexation agreements. And if we based them on an SFE basis here, and now we are going to flow base, if that changes the dynamics of the water rights on paper.
Yeah, WGM and Julie will have a technical memo.
We can track the source over a certain period of time. Once we know what our paper capacity is, we can track the source moving forward.
Roughly right now, just by paper napkin math, our water place of use for Meadow Village is about 600,000 a day. So I have a 200,000 gallon per day deficit, or 33% unaccounted for water loss or use that we've got to work on narrowing down and tracking down. So
great timing. It's time to do it right now. All right. So next meeting, everybody okay with the February 18th? Everybody gonna be able to make that? You all right, Dick, you all right? Yes. All right, so we'll confirm that, and then any other business which may properly come before the board. All right, we got a lot of time here. Anything else today? Anybody have any comments, feedback, updates? I know this is good. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Make the motion to adjourn. So move. Great. Thank you. Yeah.